Hello, my friend. Welcome to this masterclass on how to release stored, stuck, blocked emotions. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be doing this with you. And this masterclass is about the therapeutic application of meditation. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? Well, I want to get to that in a second. Firstly, I just want to offer you some mad respect for being here and for sharing your valuable time with me. I really appreciate that. And I truly hope that what we share in the next 45 minutes or so is going to be of tremendous value to you. I really hope that. So thank you for being here. The next thing is the choice to do this class was pretty spontaneous. And therefore, it's just me and you sitting here having a cuppa in the office, having a talk. I haven't prepared any manual or notes or slides or anything because I'm just like, I got an impulse to share this stuff. So let's go. Therapeutic application of meditation. Um, that's what I'm so interested in. How can meditation pierce into the very real struggles we face in life and the very real yearning we have in our heart and help bring that yearning more alive? When we talk about meditation therapeutically, it lights me up because most people I know, me included, aren't focused on going to live in a cave or on a high mountain and attaining some kind of uh, enlightenment. Most people I know are consumed with, how do I sleep better? How can my relationship be more fulfilling? How do I create or find a fulfilling relationship? How do I change my relationship to my finances? How do I release stuck emotions? How do I change my limiting beliefs? How do I repair my family dynamics? These kinds of very, very practical things. So when we talk about meditation therapeutically, it's how can meditation help with that? And all of these things I'm saying relate to our inner constructs, how our mind and emotions are constructed. That determines how we relate to the world. Therapeutic meditation means two things. We learn to deconstruct, break down, and pull apart those inner constructs so we can ideally change them. And the second aspect is we reconstruct, we build new inner constructs so we can have a whole different experience of the same old world. So I put something on Instagram stories a few days ago, and I said, I'm so keen to do a meditation masterclass on the therapeutic application of meditation. What do you guys want to talk about more specifically? So I threw a couple of ideas. It's a big topic, but I threw a couple of ideas out there, like, for example, 5 therapeutic breathwork practices, how the 5 senses relate to meditation therapeutically, um, how we can recognize our basic inherent goodness and how that negates our need to strive and over effort, or how do we release stuck and harbored emotions? And 50% of the votes came out saying they want to know how to, or have a talk about how to release stuck and harbored emotions. So that's where we are. That's what we are diving into. So therapeutic application of meditation. More specifically, how do I relate to my emotions? How do I understand them? How do I release them? So that's what we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes to half an hour. Then we'll do a little bit of meditative practice together to put it into practice. And then free to go. Class dismissed. So before I go any further, the first thing I want to do is share a story that's kind of bubbling around in my head. And it takes me back a bit over a year ago. Nalu's 4 now, and this is when he was not quite 3 yet. We were traveling around Australia, living in the caravan, and we pulled up to a town. We'd been living in the bush on the Murray River. If any of you guys know the Murray River, free camping out in the bush for some time, and we were really excited to go to this pub and have a meal and be back in society. And Nalu went to the kids' playground, and he was running around having heaps of fun with a bunch of kids, and Hannah and I were sitting back and watching him, giggling at him like we usually do. And it was really interesting to see that within a short period of time, he's such a funny, confident kid that it didn't take long from when he was standing at the outskirts of the park looking in at kids playing until all of a sudden he's not only immersed in the game, but he's running around the park with a group of 10 kids, a lot of them older, chasing him around, following him like he was the kind of the leader of the gang. He's such a little unit. And so he was running around having a good time, and all these kids were following him. And at one point, he climbed up on the playground, and it was kind of like a fort. And there was one fort here and one fort here with a kid's bridge connecting the two, a narrow little bridge. And Nalo climbed up on the fort with these 10 kids following him, and he went to walk across this bridge. And as he was walking across the bridge, walking the other way was a kid that was probably 5, I would say, and a kid that was pretty big set. He was a big boy, and I have no idea what this little kid was thinking, but I could see. I watched this whole thing play out, and it looked like this kid saw Nalu running along, and all the other kids screaming, following him, and him screaming, and what I imagine, I have no idea if this is true, but I imagine this 5-year-old kid was like, who's this kid think he is, little boy, like leading all these people? And maybe he was used to being a leader or something like that. But anyway, what he did was when Nalu went to walk across the bridge, he put his legs out wide and his arms out and held either side of the bridge and basically didn't say anything, but just stood there like this and said, you can't pass. Didn't say it, but that was his actions. And then Nalu went to go around him to the left, and the kid moved that way to block him. And then Nalu tried to get around that way, and the kid moved that way. And again, the third time. So Nalu was trying to get past, and his kid was just like, no, you're not getting past me. And as a parent, I was sitting, this is, it's not a big deal, but as a parent already, my heart's beating a little faster. I'm thinking, oh no, what's going to happen here? And even the story in my head, like, who's this bully? Why is he being a prick? These are the stories that automatically came up in my mind. It was so interesting to watch what Nalu did. He took a step back, and I saw him nearly, there's so much to learn from our kids. Hey, he took a step back and he took a breath and he exhaled, and he looked up at this quote unquote bully, and he wrapped his arms around him and gave him a big hug and then let go. And this kid just was like a bit dumbfounded. He didn't know what to do. And he just kind of stepped aside and let Nalu pass, and all the other kids screaming, following. And then the funny thing was, then this bigger kid jumped into the crew and started running around and following them all and playing together with the group, not trying to be an outsider or not feeling like an outsider, but all of a sudden he felt included too. And I was just like, that is so interesting and so inspiring. And I think I just learned a huge life lesson from my 2.5-year-old son. Because think about it this way. What do you imagine would have happened if, when Nalu came up against the resistance of the older, heavier set kid, if Nalu had pushed him or attempted to push him out of the way, said, and even got angry, get out of my way? I wonder what would have happened. My guess would be this big kid would push back twice as hard. And then maybe Nalu would fall over, maybe even fall off the bridge, maybe even be shamed in front of all his friends. And then this kid could become the leader or feel tough or feel more self-righteous in his stance of wanting to be the bully. But he was completely disarmed. He was completely disarmed. And the disarming helped him to actually join in and move with the flow of the playground. So what does this have to do with anything? I'm glad you asked. So many of us, when our emotions stir within our unconscious mind and start to come up into consciousness, we start to feel them, whether it's sadness or grief or fear or anger. Any emotions start to stir, we habitually push back. Maybe we have a story like, not now. What am I feeling that again for? I'm not allowed to be angry in this situation. I can't express sadness now in front of my friends. There's always some story that causes us to push back. If our emotions want to get out and we push them, they're going to push back twice as hard. They're going to find a way out. Have you noticed that within yourself? That you can do your very best, all the good intentions in the world to suppress your emotions, and it will work for a little while, but they'll keep growing. They'll keep getting bigger. Think about sadness. You might feel a little inkling of sadness, push it down. Next time, a little more, push it down. It'll grow until you explode and erupt and have a breakdown. The same with anger. It'll have to turn to rage to get out. Maybe the same with grief, maybe the same with fear. As emotions get suppressed, they get stronger and push back harder. Why? Because they want out. As a coach, I hear people say to me, I want to be free of sadness or anger or fear. And it's so interesting to consider. And this is what I often say. Guess what? Your emotion wants to be free from you. That's why it's trying to get out. That's why it's trying to get out. But what is my opinion of and the way I relate to my emotion? What's my opinion of my emotion? You know, very obviously, a very obvious one for me, a man growing up in Australia in a public school system, I had, you know, up until I started meditating and becoming a little more self-aware, I had an opinion that sadness was bad and you're weak if you cry. And so I felt guilt if I was crying or upset. I would feel incredible shame. It's like overlaying emotion on top of emotion, and guilt and embarrassment. If I had to admit I was scared, if I had to admit that I had fear, once again, shame, guilt, remorse, embarrassment. I thought anger was bad and it was just not something that I was allowed to do. I was actually scared to be angry because of who I might hurt or what it might mean, or maybe it'll turn out of control. So over so many years, I'm slowly learning to have a new relationship with an opinion of emotions, understanding that when they rise up, there's a way in which I can hug them. There's a way in which I can hug them and recognize that they don't have power over me. They just want to be felt and released. And then they can join in on the general flow of life and work with me rather than against me. But if I have a negative opinion that wants to suppress and push away and push against and resist, they only come back stronger. So how can we all internalize the example from Nalu? And when we're in the face of emotion, develop some emotional intelligence 101 and be real with the way we feel. Not idealize it and pretend we don't feel what we feel, ignore, suppress, push away, feel shame, but be real. This is how I feel right now. And it doesn't mean we have to do it all the time out in the world in front of everyone in every moment, because you might not feel safe to do that. And that's okay too. But there has to be a time where we give ourselves permission to unpack what we feel. There has to be a time when we give ourselves permission to unpack what we're holding, whether that's with a psychologist, with a coach or a mentor, with someone you feel safe with in your family or your partner, wife, husband, or behind closed doors by yourself, journaling or meditating, letting it out. There has to be a place where we can release what we're holding, or it will overpower us in the least opportune moments. It'll take over us when we don't want it to, and we won't be able to stop. You ever had a big blind reaction of anger or rage in a moment that you didn't actually want to, but it just came out? It happens to me sometimes as a father, like if I've been distracted and spreading myself too thin and overworking or something like that, and I haven't taken the time to have some space and process my own emotions, Nala will do something that really triggers me and I'll react and I'll be like, oh, so sorry. That wasn't on you. That was me. I haven't looked after myself. And now it's coming out in a way that I don't want it to. You ever done that? Or you've been trying so hard to hold it all together and be positive, and you're watching a movie or at a birthday party, and all of a sudden you're treating, you can't hold back the floodgates of sadness, and they overwhelm you, even though you'd been trying so hard to keep it together. So the question is, what do we do? How, in those moments when I want to and am open to releasing emotion, how do I do it? How do I do it? One really interesting thing about emotions to realize is that scientific studies have shown us that the nature of emotion is impermanence. And if emotion was felt in the moment that it was arising and there was no mental reaction or story about it, it would come and nearly go as quickly as it came. For example, anger might only last, with no story, if it was fully felt and lived, only 15 to 20 seconds. And every emotion has a different air time. Like sadness moves a little slower naturally, but the thing all emotions have in common is that they are impermanent. So what is it that makes them sometimes last 30 years? Being a coach, sometimes I've worked one-on-one with people and they've told me about some anger that they've had, and we've done a process, a conversation about a releasing of anger. And they're like, that knot that I've had in my tummy for 15 years just went. And they're like, why didn't I do this earlier? 15 years I've been feeling that knot in my belly of anger. And now I can feel it's gone. We don't have the tools. We don't know how. No one's shown us. I wish I learned this in kindergarten, but I'm glad I learned it when I did, because life gets so much more free when you're fully available to the moment, because you're not spending energy suppressing your emotion. You're not trying to hide the way you feel. You can see the moment as it is. You're not seeing it through the clouded lens of the past emotions that still live within your unconscious mind now. So how do I let them go? I understand. Understanding that they're impermanent, understanding they want to be released from you is a really good start, because it helps us to remember that we don't have to block, fight, or resist emotions when they're arising. The healthiest thing we can do when it's a safe moment, the healthiest thing we can do is sit down and create the space to be able to allow that thing to come up and out. But for so many of us, and I sometimes get like this too, we resist the pain of emotion because living in numb, avoidant aloofness can feel better. But would you rather live in numb, avoidant aloofness for a long period of time, or have a little moment of discomfort as you process emotion and then feel so clear and light and free afterwards and empowered? So let's get into the how we do it, shall we? There's a few simple steps. When we have hoarded, harbored, stored, or stuck emotions, there's a few simple steps we can go through to deconstruct that inner structure of emotions. Your emotions are created by virtue of your mental reactions and what you think about things. So emotion is the body's reaction to thoughts you have. Maybe thoughts about an inner experience, maybe thoughts about something you experience in the world, but you have the thought first and then the body reacts. Sometimes it feels like it goes the other way around, doesn't it? Sometimes it feels like emotions come up out of nowhere. And that's because they've been they have been stagnant and they've been recreated through mental reactions. But originally, all emotions are created by thoughts first. An emotion is, the definition of emotion is the body's reaction to a thought. So when we understand that, we can go, okay, what is it that takes emotion from something that's passing and impermanent to something that sticks around and gets stuck? When emotions come up, rather than allowing them, we have a mental reaction to the emotion. So if I was in a situation that triggered me or made me feel angry or I felt unsafe or made me feel sad, then emotion came up. I had the thoughts first. Why did they do that? Oh, this is horrible, or this is unjust. Then the emotion come up. Then the emotion feeds into, re-empowers the thinking, and then the emotion gets stronger again, and they go in this biofeedback loop of thought, emotion, and it just turns into a big bubble of reactivity. So the way to start to release emotion is to start to decouple the thinking and the analysis from the bodily sensation. Start to decouple those things. And so you can just be with and be mindful of the bodily sensation of emotion without the story. And if you decouple those things, then very quickly there's nothing to perpetuate or continue the storm of emotion, and so it bubbles up and passes away as you add no longer add fuel to the fire. Does that make sense? You start to decouple belief, thought, and mental reactivity from emotion. So what are the steps? There's 5 of them. When we talk about deconstructing emotion, there's 5 steps we can look at that really help. So if you've got a pen and paper, this would be really cool to write this down. The first one is awareness. The second one is acceptance. The third one is disidentification. The fourth one is inquiry. Oops, why am I saying 4 and I got 5 hands, 5 fingers? I got no idea. At some point I lost count. The fifth one is remembrance. So let's break them down one at a time and talk a little bit about them. The first one, awareness. It's kind of obvious that nothing really changes unless you're first aware of something. Nothing really changes unless you're first aware of it. So awareness in this sense is the clear seeing of something. So, you can be sad, or you can be angry, or you can be frustrated, or you can be guilty or shameful and not necessarily know that you're feeling that way. It's not like you're sitting back looking at something you're experiencing. You're in it. You're wearing it as who you are. You don't even know that you're experiencing it. For some reason, you're feeling reactive, short-tempered, exhausted, but you don't even know why. There's not the awareness of what's truly going on for you present yet. But by taking a moment, a few deep breaths, and asking some good questions, we can very quickly become aware of how we actually feel. So we're no longer engrossed in and completely merged with anger, for example. But now I can be aware of the sensation of anger in my body. So whatever emotion you feel, can you become aware of it? Can you see it clearly? So you're no longer seeing through the lens of anger or sadness or fear or frustration or shame. You're now seeing the lens itself. That's what awareness is. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just to drop out of your head, drop out of the thinking, drop out of the analysis, drop out of the story, drop out of the whatever's going on in your mind, and feel it in your body. Where do you feel it? How does it feel? How does it move? Is it hot or cold, heavy or light? Where do you feel it? How do you know you've got emotion? Because you feel it. What unique and particular feelings does it have? And can you be aware of that? Can you be aware of that? Sorry. You hear that bing? Better silence that. Very unprofessional of me, isn't it? So awareness, that's the first thing. You can't change anything you're not aware of, but once you're aware of it, then you can look at it and be with it and take the next step, which is acceptance. You know, if I think about Nalu on that bridge, when I saw him pause, he went right, left, couldn't get past. I saw him pause, take a breath. And whether he knew it or not, I'm sure he didn't, because he was not even 3 yet. He embodied an attitude of acceptance. Here's my situation. I'm not going to fight it or resist it. Here's my situation I'm faced with. Here's my situation as it is right now. Here's my reality in this moment. I accept that. The next best course of action came from his acceptance. The intuitive impulse at how to disarm the entire situation came from the foundation of acceptance. And let's be very clear. I'm not asking you to tolerate or accept whatever situation or circumstance caused you to feel grief, anger, sadness, frustration, shame, fear. I'm asking you to accept that in the moment you feel emotion, emotion is there. Just accept reality as it is in this very unique and present moment. And understand that by suppressing or resisting emotion, there's nothing to gain. We sometimes think that if I accept my emotion, then I'm permitting whatever caused my emotion to exist. You know, I've talked to people who, for example, might have sadness or deep hurt about what someone did to them or the way someone acted. And they think, if I accept the sadness and hurt and let it go, I'm letting that person off the hook. And they won't be, we think we punish people by holding on to hurt and sadness and resentment. We're only punishing ourselves because we have the opportunity to be free of the heaviness of the emotions we carry. So don't even accept them. Don't even accept, that might come, but for now, don't accept anything outside of yourself in the world around. Don't accept the past, what happened. You might get to that, but for right now, when you close your eyes and you feel your emotion, accept that in your body, there's this feeling. And it has its own story to tell. It has a way it wants to behave. Because let me tell you, there is intelligence in your mind and body that we are not even beginning to understand yet. It is a self-cleansing mechanism under the right circumstance. It wants to move back to equilibrium and homeostasis. And when we completely let go and accept and lose all resistance, there is emotional intelligence hardwired into the very nature of our nervous system. It knows how to release and cleanse itself. But when we resist, when we hold strong, when we knuckle and bear down, we prevent the body from doing the very thing it wants to do, which is heal. When we have a story that causes us to react to our emotion, we prevent the body from doing what it wants to do and knows how to do innately and naturally. Let your acceptance be so gentle, so thorough, so deep. Give yourself permission to completely open and feel what you do feel anyway. It's already there. Just accept the fact it's there. It takes great courage because it means you have to feel it, and it will wobble out through your nervous system as it makes its way from the depths of your mind up to the surface and out. I never said it was easy, but it's what needs to and wants to be done. Sometimes what's right and necessary isn't easy. But the goal is when you do what's right and necessary, even if it's hard, the fruits become worth it. Acceptance. When we can be aware of something and accept it and it becomes fluid rather than resistant, there's a space that opens up between the thing and us. We call this the ability to disidentify from something. So when I have a mental story that's so intertwined with the emotion, I'm identified with it. It's a part of who I am, and my identity is amalgamated or merged with the emotion, the thoughts, the experience, and the feeling and the memory are all blended as one thing called identity. But when we start to see it clearly through awareness and accept it so it can move, we can sit back and go, whoa, here's me. And there's that thing, the feeling in my body, and I don't have to identify with it. Identifying means I have a story about it. Can I feel it in the absence of story? Can I feel it without mentally reacting to it? So sometimes our mental reactions will be like, I shouldn't feel this. Sometimes the mental reactions are, how dare they make me feel like this? Sometimes the mental reactions are, I can't let anyone know that I feel like this. Sometimes the mental reactions are, why this shit again? But they're all story and analysis and mental reactions that indicate there's some kind of identification with, and therefore resistance to, or perpetuation of the emotion. Like another form of identification will be people that identify with a feeling like sadness, and therefore the reaction might be, this is a part of who I am, and there's value to gain from being sad. Like I'm just a sad person. And we don't want to let it go because we've happily become that, and we get some kind of attention or reward from practicing and being that. Even if it's negative attention, attention is attention. So it might not be, why am I feeling this again? It might be, oh, this is my familiar place. Anger is my familiar place. Shame is my familiar place. Resentment is my familiar place. We don't even know who we would be without it. So disidentifying is when I cease the story and just see the experience with acceptance and awareness, and I start to realize there's something deeper. I am something different from what I've experienced. I am something different from the stories in my mind. I am something different from the feelings in my body. The disidentification also wakes up our awareness to something deeper behind the things that are moving in our mind and body, a deeper sense of self. We sharpen the sword of that deeper sense of self through the power of inquiry. And that sword is something we can pierce straight into the emotion we feel and start to unravel it and open it up so it can pass. This is the fourth step, inquiry. Inquiry just means asking some good questions. In that last example I gave of identification, a really good question would be, what value do I get from holding on to this emotion? And it's really interesting because most of us would say, well, nothing, it's a negative emotion. I want to get rid of it, right? But if you really look If there's an emotion, you in particular, and so I'm not speaking to anyone, but I might be speaking to some of you. If there's an emotion that you hold on to and don't want to let go of, what does it give you? I know people, for example, who hold on to a sense of victimhood. And when they get really honest and ask, why am I holding on to the emotions around feeling like a victim? It's because it makes people feel sorry for me and come in and help. And I'm scared that if I let that go, I wouldn't get the support I get. So what do I get out of holding on to this thing? You know, I've coached some young men and women who have intense anxiety. And when we really ask the question, why do you want to hold on to it? And get really honest. I've had a client, for example, who has and experiences strong anxiety, and then certain family members come out of nowhere and bend over backwards to make sure he's okay. And there's this weird sense of anxiety serving him somehow, just becomes who we are. What do I get out of holding on to this emotion? Another example would be I've talked to people whose one of their parents has passed away and they have deep sadness. And we talk about it, and there's a fear that if I let go of sadness, it's like a lack of love for the legacy and the life that the parent lived. I'm holding on to it because that's the way I show how much that person meant to me. And of course, the logical mind might go, the logical mind goes, of course, you got to live fully. That's how you could show your love for them. But we have these implicit unconscious programs that we're not even often aware of until we start asking these kinds of questions. Who would I be without it? Who would I be without this emotion? Another great question. Who would I be without it? If I was able to unpick it and unravel it and release it, who would I be without it? Am I ready, truly ready to let it go? These kinds of questions, just making inquiries. And what could I learn from it? Is there anything that I could learn or realize from having harbored this emotion? You know, for example, someone might have a real relationship with anger and it kind of gets stuck and it becomes a pattern for them. And they realize that they have to be angry because they're not good at setting clear and compassionate boundaries. Anger is normally an indicator that somewhere along the way our boundaries have been crossed and we need to defend ourselves with anger, right? But what if there's another way? Something we can learn from anger is to go, well, if I can find a way to set compassionate and clear boundaries and be more clear about what's okay with me and what isn't, then I won't need to harbor hold anger as a defense mechanism to the degree that I do. So we make some inquiries. And then from there, things start to unravel and become loose and move, and anger, puff, sadness does its thing. It does what it does. It might mean for some time we're sitting, sobbing, bent over, bawling. But when I rest behind it and I realize I'm not it, what is the space behind the thoughts? What is the space behind the anger made of? Who am I as the vast, open, peaceful space behind the story, the emotions that I've been intertwined with? What does it feel like to rest in that spatial awareness? This is what we call remembrance. Remembering something about who you are behind how you have been. So those 5 steps really help. You can do them as a journaling exercise. It's real. If you have an emotion come up, journal it out and go through those 5 things one at a time. Or you can do it as a closed-eyed practice, feeling into any emotion that you do feel. So I reckon we do that together now. Keen? Keen. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's do it. So what I want you to do is find a nice, comfortable seat. And make sure you're in a nice, quiet place where you can be undisturbed for the next 10 or so minutes. And once you've got a nice, comfortable seat, go ahead and close your eyes. You can also leave them open, to be honest. Either way is fine. But either way, let your attention internalize. Let your breath be easy and soft. And your mind just kind of be blank, just as it is. I want you to consider any emotion that is in your body that you feel is a little stuck or continual in your life. And when you consider that emotion that you've been feeling, notice where you feel it in your body. How do you experience that particular emotion? Is it in your belly or your chest, or tightness in your neck or throat, or heat in your head? Heaviness in your pelvis? Where and how do you feel the emotion? And notice the unique characteristics and qualities of that emotion. Like, is it moving fast, or is it pretty still and slow? Is it heavy, or is it light? Is it hot, or is it cold? As you become aware of the emotion, recognize that as awareness, you're looking at it and experiencing it. You're aware of it. You're not in it, you're aware of it. And once we're aware of something, we can start to have a relationship with it consciously. So the first expression of conscious relationship with emotion is honoring the fact that it's here and accepting its presence in our body. Right here, right now, in this moment. This unique energy and feeling that we call emotion is here. And as you just accept that fact and soften and relax and open, allow any resistance to the emotion to melt away. so it can be opened, lived, and felt. And as you accept it and watch it as a deeper awareness, disidentify from the emotion. So typically when we lose resistance and it starts to stir and we start to feel it, sometimes stories pass through our mind, maybe memories, maybe mental reactions or thoughts. If you notice that happen, just drop out of your head and back to the unique experience of the feelings in your body. And as you watch the emotion, recognize you're not it. It is an energy and information moving through and around you. Disidentifying means I don't need to control it. You don't need to defend it. You don't need to justify it. It can just be. It's not you. You can let it do what it wants to do. What's the behavior? What's the pattern? What is the emotion? How does it want to move through you? Just watch. What's the nature of that emotion? And knowing it wants to be free from you, how does it behave? And now, as we just allow and accept and be aware of that emotion, let's inquire into it a little bit. As you watch this emotion, how much suffering has it caused for you in your life? What effect has it had over your expression, your mind, your heart, your life, your friendships, relationships? What effect has it had over your life? What benefit does holding on to the emotion bring, if any? And if it does bring a benefit, is there another way? Is there another way that you could have that benefit without having to hold on to and perpetuate the heaviness of this emotion? There is another way. What is it? You might notice these questions are nearly like sharp swords that start to pierce and pull apart and soften and open and eventually release any stagnation around emotion. Who would you be without it? How would you feel without it? Now, notice yourself as the one who's making these inquiries. Like you're the one that's sitting and looking at the feeling in your body. You're the one that's aware of the feelings. Now become aware of the awareness itself. Become aware of the spaciousness behind feelings and thoughts. Become aware of what it feels like to be you on the other side of the emotion, the thoughts, the spacious awareness itself. How does that feel? How does the spacious awareness feel? And from the inner innate intelligence of your spatial awareness and the peace or the freedom that comes with that from the intelligence of that space, we make one more inquiry. Is there anything I can learn or remember about who and what I am that will support me to move forward free of that emotion I've been carrying? Is there anything I can learn or remember or realize about myself? What unique message does the depths of my insides have for me? How can I productively move forward from here on, from now on? And if an answer arises to those inquiries, it might be just a feeling. It might be a word you hear. It might be something you see. It might be something you just know. It might be just a general sense of okayness. Either way, bring that sense of calm and spaciousness and awareness back into the fullness of your body so it permeates through all that you are. Take a couple of slightly deeper breaths. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and make your way back. Welcome back. So as I said, you can go through those 5 steps as a closed-eyed practice. You can just sit open-eyed, looking out at a beautiful view, contemplating them. You can sit down and journal them. So many ways you can find the space to be with whatever emotions arise in your body that want to be released, if you're having trouble releasing them. And the cool thing is, over time, it gets easier and easier to release emotions as they arise so they don't become a multi-year story. It gets easier and easier to experience something, feel it, and know what to do to open and allow the things to come up and pass. It does get easier. And this skill, like all things, is a practice. And sometimes we have to do it again and again to start to familiarize ourselves in terms of how we relate to emotions. If, like the example I gave of myself when I was growing up, I had a really negative association with emotions and felt like I had to control them. So it takes some time. So be patient and keep at it, and just know that you are doing amazing. I would love to hear from you. Um, if you're out there in the world and you did this class with me, I'd love to know how you went. So you could either reach out via email or via Instagram, probably the two easiest ways. Um, and yeah, if you have any questions or feedback or comments that you want to share about how you went, then yeah, I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time. And the story of emotions is a big one. And I've totally forgot to look at the time when I pressed record and started. So I don't even know how long we've been going for, but within an hour or whatever it's been, there's only so much we can cover. There's only so much we can talk about. So this is the start of a big journey, and you're doing amazing. And the courage to show up and want to release emotions that have been having some kind of dominance over your life is the first step. And it takes bravery. So kudos to you for that. And, we are, if you want to do more of this kind of thing, we are starting a 3-month course in, I don't know when you'll be watching this, but it's starting in a few days from now, less than a week. And it's on the therapeutic application of meditation. And we go into depth week after week for 3 months of how meditation, simple mindfulness and contemplative practices can bleed into everything that's going on within your mind and life and forge deep and sustainable change from the inside out. As we said, there's two elements to what we do. One of them is deconstructive in nature, because if you want to change the inner structures of your psychology, you have to first pull apart, disidentify from, and dismantle the structures that are no longer serving you in your life. And the second one is, what do I want to grow in my life? What's my calling in this life? And how do I develop my character so it's in alignment with what I'm being called to do in this life? And how do we use meditation and contemplation to pull apart and regrow, to whip out the weeds and plant new seeds? That's what this course is all about. And this is I guess, a tiny little insight for those of you who can't join us for the full course, and hopefully something I can offer for free to those of you who don't want to or can't do the full 3-month training. And for those of you who do want to and are interested, please reach out. I'll put the link with the notes associated with the video here, but reach out, let me know. It's starting soon, and it's something I'm so excited about and so looking forward to. I can't wait. So, my friends, I'll leave that with you. If you have any questions about it, let me know. If you have any questions about today, also let me know. Otherwise, go forth, be awesome, have fun. And my deepest prayer is that this can offer some support in your journey of understanding, relating to, and releasing emotions. Why? Because I want you to move through this world lit up, wholehearted, and fully engaged with this incredible journey called life. Fully engaged, lit up, heart on fire, engaged with life, capable and available to do the thing you're born to do. And sometimes stagnant emotions get in the way of us doing that. So if this can offer even a little bit of help with that, that's my prayer and my wish. All right, my friend. Happy day to you. Thanks for being here, and I'll chat with you soon.